Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Megillah. We are up to Perek Daled, Mishnah Daled. Today's Mishnah should be Leilun Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbaev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen. And Leavdi ben Chaim Rechaim for the Refuah Shenemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betoch Shar Chorei Israel. After the Babylonian exile, many people did not know Hebrew well, so to help them understand the Torah reading in the synagogue, it was the custom to have a translator, a meturgeman, explain each verse in Aramaic, which was the commonly spoken language at that time. This practice dates back to the time of Ezra HaSofer, at the end of the Babylonian exile. In Babylonia, the Jewish people adopted Aramaic as their spoken language. Later, when Aramaic itself was no longer commonly spoken by Jews, the practice of using a translator was discontinued. It never became the custom to use another language instead of Aramaic. Why? Because the Aramaic translation used since the time of Ezra was unique, and that it was composed with the help of Ruach HaKodesh, the divine inspiration, as the Tur writes in Orach Chaim, chapter 145. This Mishnah presents some rules for reading the Torah when there is a translator. HaKoreh b'Torah lo yifchot mishlosha psukim. One who reads the Torah may not read fewer than 3 verses. Whenever someone reads the Torah in the synagogue, the section that he reads must be at least 3 verses long, and the minimum of 3 verses corresponds to the 3 parts of Scripture: Torah, prophets, and writings, as the Gemara brings down in Masechet Megillah, page 24a. Lo yikra lameturgeman yoter mipasuk echad. However, the translator may not read more than 1 verse at a time for the translator, meaning he must pause after each verse to let the translator repeat in Aramaic. If he reads more than 1 verse at a time, the translator who does not read from a written text might become confused and make mistakes. So again, one who reads the Torah may not read fewer than 3 verses. However, he may not read more than 1 verse at a time for the translator. Ubanavi shlosha. But when reading from the prophets, he may read up to 3 verses at a time for the translator. Since laws are not derived from the prophets, mistakes in translation are of less concern. Even so, he may not read more than 3 verses at once, the Miri says, as this is quite likely to confuse the translator. However, if the 3 of them, the 3 verses to be read from the prophets, are from 3 separate paragraphs, now this can occur when the reading includes a paragraph that consists of a single verse, the Mishnah teaches that he must pause for the translator before and after the single verse paragraph. Again, we must read them one at a time, because the translator is quite likely to make mistakes if the verses he must translate are from different paragraphs. Now the Mishnah discusses whether passages read in the synagogue must consist of paragraphs that are written consecutively in the Torah and prophets. Medalgin banaviv and medalgin b'Torah. We may skip from one paragraph to another when reading from the prophets. Now this is permitted even if the new section deals with a different topic than the one he has just read, but we may not skip when reading the Torah. Now it is forbidden to skip when reading the Torah, because one who hears the reader skip from place to place will find it hard to concentrate. Now it is necessary for the paragraphs to be consecutive only if they deal with different subjects. If 2 paragraphs deal with the same subject, the reader may skip from one to the other, even if they are not consecutive. For instance, when the Kohen Gadol read the Torah on Yom Kippur, he read 2 non-consecutive paragraphs that both pertain to the laws of Yom Kippur. Now, this is not a concern when reading a passage from the prophets, since laws are not derived from the prophets. Therefore, we may skip from one paragraph to another when reading from the prophets, even if the new section deals with a different topic than the one he just read. How far ahead may one skip? Ad as far as we can roll the scroll before the translator finishes translating, meaning the reader may not skip so far ahead that by the time the scrolls roll to his new place, the translator will have finished explaining the last verse that was read. If the reader skips more than that, the congregation would have to wait in silence from the time the translator finishes until the rolling finishes, and it is disrespectful to make the congregation wait. And this guideline applies both to the reading from the Torah and to the reading from the prophets. And that is in the Mishnah Daled. Mishnah He now teaches that someone who regularly reads the Haftarah is accorded special honors. Hamaftir banavi upores al shema. The one who regularly reads the Haftarah is given the honor of dividing the Shema, as we spoke about in chapter 4, Mishnah 3. Vu over lifnei ateva, and the honor of going before the ark to repeat the Shmona Esrei. Vu noset et kapav, and if he is a Kohen, the honor of acting as the leader of the Kohanim when lifting his hands to recite the priestly blessing, meaning he begins the blessing slightly before the other Kohanim, as if he were the most respected one of them. Since he regularly reads the Haftarah, which was considered an unimportant task, the sages ruled that he should be given these honors. Now, people felt that reading the Haftarah was beneath their dignity, since it can be done even by a minor. Therefore, he is given the honors listed here as a reward of sorts. These honors include dividing the Shema, repeating the Shmona Esrei, even though these take place before the Haftarah is read. Since he reads the Haftarah regularly, we may assume that he will do so this time as well. V'imei hakatan, however, if he is a minor and cannot lead the prayers, as will be discussed in the next Mishnah, aviv or rabo ovrin al yado, his father or his teacher goes before the ark to lead the prayers in his place. When a minor reads the Haftarah, it is as though his father and teacher are also reading it, since they are responsible for him. Therefore, one of them leads the prayers, just as if he were the one who actually read the Haftarah. And that is in Abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.